relationships are scalable. If marketing's job is to build relationships at scale, and if relationships are built through conversation, how can marketing be used to drive conversation? We didn't really define relationships. The channels via which relationships are built have changed, and technology is allowing us to build relationships at scale on a personal level. Leverage relationships to drive growth in your organization. If you shift the focus to relationships instead of revenue, magic things happen. Relationships are at the core because they help you build affinity and trust. That's how relationships are built. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another session of Relationship-Led Growth Live. My name is Mike Grimberg. I'm the CEO of Proof by Marketing. I've got Joseph Lewin with me here as most times. He's our Director of Growth. Welcome. And we're talking about how to post on LinkedIn today. Everybody's favorite topic. Well, maybe not everybody's, but the reason we're talking about it is I think most of us inherently know that we need to build relationships. Most of us inherently know that LinkedIn specifically is a great place to do that. Obviously, the same thing could go for other social platforms, depending on your industry. Maybe for you, it's Reddit or TikTok or whatever. But the overarching theme here is you generally know it's a good opportunity. But the two core things we hear all the time are either A, I don't have time, which we'll address a little bit today, but that's a slightly different conversation, or I don't know what or how to post. Usually there's an element of fear to that. There's an element of not being sure of yourself, and there's an element of just simply not even knowing how from a technical perspective, let's just say. So we're going to address all of those things today. We're going to get really, really tactical. But first, as usual, we will go through some mindsets that we really are key to understand to do this well. So before we do that, really, let's show some examples of what we're talking about, give people something to think about as we are going through this.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, before we dive in, we are having a training coming up. So if we're sharing anything during this live that sticks with you and you're going, man, this is good stuff, I'd like some more support on how to do this. We are going to be having a training coming up starting on September 19th. We're going to go through the details at the very end, but just want to let everybody know we have that coming. But yeah, I think the first thing to me to focus on here is, why should you post on LinkedIn? And that's not really the purpose of this. We're going to get really tactical. And I'm assuming that if you're joining this, you probably have some idea of why you should post. But I wanted to share this example that I had happen a couple weeks ago, where I posted and somebody that's been following my content for a while commented on it, liked the post, and then reached out directly to me and was like, hey, I'd like to have a deeper conversation about how we can drive demand at my company. And that led to a discovery call with this individual. So the reason that you would post from a sales perspective or from an executive perspective is you're able to reach the right people who are going to be interested in your point of view. And if you do it right, they're going to want to reach out to you to have a conversation. Or on the flip side, when you reach out to them to have a conversation, they're already familiar with you and they already want to work with you. If you aren't experiencing that and you're wondering, okay, what should I post? And maybe you've tried something in the past, there's a good chance that you've posted something like one of these two examples. And I just literally went and searched and found these two examples pretty quickly from salespeople who are looking to try to drive business. And these are just total sales pitches. And on both of these, you can see it very small at the bottom. It says, be the first person to react. And these were hours old at this point. People aren't really interested in hearing about you or your solution or what you're doing until you show them that you care about them and their problems and what they care about. So I want to show you guys a couple examples of people that are doing this really well that are in the professional services space. So these aren't, they're not in SaaS. They're not in these super flashy industries. They're in, actually, both of these guys are, I didn't do that on purpose, but they're both in the manufacturing space. So one of them is Jake Hall. And I know Jake is in sales specifically. So he's a sales guy, and he gets a crazy amount of attention to his posts. And then whenever he's going to an event, he gets swamped. I literally saw, I should have found this one, but he had a post from one of his recent events he went to where he had, I think, 300 selfies from this one event where people came to him wanting to get a picture with him. So if you're a salesperson and you're going to an event, that's a really good spot to be in when people are coming up to you and want to hear what you have to say. And so I don't know if you can really see that on the presentation, but a couple of these have several thousand engagements and tons of comments and shares. So Jake's an example of somebody who's doing a really good job at posting content that people want to engage with. Example number 2 is a friend of mine, Jeff Winter. And I believe that this one on the left has over 8,000 engagements on it. But he's talking about really technical stuff. And Jeff specifically posts things that are usually very data driven. He's using visuals to explain them and break them down. But he's focused on highly technical stuff and simplifying it. He talks a lot about Industry 4.0 and IIoT, and then also AI and how that's being used in manufacturing specifically. And he gets a ton of engagement. And I know just from conversations I've had with him, he's gotten a ton of opportunities through his post speaking engagements and podcast opportunities and being on different advisory boards and things like that. So Mike, you had a couple examples here too.
Yeah, so this one's actually, so Mark Stoos is somebody that I've connected with recently. He actually is in the SaaS space. But the reason I put this out here is because this is literally the perfect example of what, for sure, an executive leader should be doing. Virtually, like every once in a while, he'll mention his company, which is Proof Analytics. But most of the things that he puts out there is his POV. And this is a really critical thing to note, right? So, Mark's got a big following. I think it's roughly 30,000 followers, something like that. But he puts out really complex and provocative, if you will, thoughts out there about what GTM, go-to-market, should look like and what the changes are, et cetera. He's writing a book, all these kinds of things. He almost never talks about his analytics company, which is, in his opinion, helps to solve some of these problems that exist. But he doesn't really tout what Proof Analytics can do and the features and the benefits and all this kind of stuff. He talks about the pain that exists, the trends that are happening, the problems that are happening that executives, CEOs, and CFOs are telling him about, and the general solution, the category of, we'll say, predictive analytics for the most part, right? That's what he talks about. And you can see again that, maybe not as much engagement as the other examples that Joseph showed. But if you look at his post, which, by the way, if you're in the go-to-market space, if you're a marketing leader, a CEO, a CFO, even, I highly recommend you follow Mark. But point being here is that the things that he puts out there are about his POV in the category, not about his product. So on the flip side, what you get is all this kind of noise, similar to what Joseph just showed. Again, I'm obviously blocking things out I don't want to call anybody out, but this is what usually you see is, hey, check out our webinar. Hey, our webinar is at noon. Hey, such and such is revolutionizing the my God, I can't even say it. the play, the industry, whatever. Like it's boring. Nobody cares. Right? The reality is nobody cares about the product. Nobody even really cares about the solution unless they have a good understanding of their problem. So that gets us into why are we talking about this, right? Well, first thing you need to do before you start posting and creating content and engaging is really understand who out there needs to hear from you. Who needs to hear your POV? And I don't mean that in a self-serving way. This is not your wish list of who do I ideally want to work with? No, these are who out there actually has the pain point that you can help them solve, that your category can help them solve. So first you need to define that. And that takes you to another piece, which is most people then want to say, well, okay, well, now I know my target audience. And I want to encourage you to change that thinking. Target audience, sure, but what you really care about is the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem that you can tap into and help create to get the right people to hear your POV? So what I mean by that is you're switching from target audience to ecosystem allows you to think more broadly about not just who are the decision makers that are going to buy from you, but also industry opinion leaders and your own staff and employees and partners and past clients, like all this kind of stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute, kind of what does the ecosystem actually look like? But switching that from target audience allows you to more strategically think about who to actually try to get your message in front of and start conversations with. And that's even more important, I think, for salespeople because you're so focused on, I have my list of target accounts and I'm going to talk to these people. That's great. That's not a bad thing. You should have a very, very tight target account list. I know we have a number of sales folks on here, Matt, and I know a few other people. Like, I'm not telling you to change that. Don't. Like, you want that, but you should think more broadly about what does the ecosystem actually look like. So, what do I mean by that?
Wait, Mike, here before you dive in, just so that we can focus this conversation as we're going through. If you're joining us live, it looks like there's quite a few of you on live. Post in the comments what industry you're in. So as we're talking through this or we're giving examples, we can hopefully throw some things out that'll be a little bit more relevant to you as we're going through.
Good call. Yeah, definitely throughout the industry. We always want to tailor this to you as much as possible. And if you have a question about anything, don't be shy. Throw it in the comments. We love taking detours if it makes sense. So at least I do. So, okay, what people usually think about in terms of referrals, and this is an important piece, right? Not just about who's going to buy from you directly, but who can refer business to you. That's one way to think more broadly about your ecosystem. But then from there, most people think, well, it's my current clients, current employees, current partners, and current industry groups that I'm part of. That's a very limiting lens and view of of that. Where referrals actually come from is you have to think about a current, past, and future. This may sound weird. I'll explain that in a second. So, first of all, on the current side, again, who are the current influencers and key opinion leaders out there in the industry that you should be getting in front of? Who are your competitors that you might, especially indirect competitors, where there might be an opportunity for a strategic partnership? Who are advocates that you can bring on board? The other ones I kind of already mentioned. But then you got to think about past. So past clients. How many of you currently have a good enough relationship with past clients that you continuously look to engage them so that they can give you referrals? Pop a message, say yes in the comments if you do. Same thing with employees. When employees leave, Do you keep them in your orbit? Do you make it easy for them to refer you business, etc.? And then think about the future too. The specific example I'll talk about is, just to illustrate the point, key opinion leaders. What about people who maybe have a small audience now, but what if you give them the opportunity to build that up, and now there's reciprocity in place? So that when they are bigger and they have more influence, they're more likely to, send things your way. So when you think about your ecosystem, think about it in the framework of referrals. All right. So let's go into some details here. So when we think about what we're trying to do, relationship-led growth as a concept, there are three things that we want you to be thinking about, and we're going to be talking about right now, that getting active on LinkedIn or your social platform of choice, we're going to focus on LinkedIn today, are going to help you do. Number one is build affinity. So helping people uncover that they have the problem and what problem is causing the pain that they have. Start conversations and then nurture relationships. And obviously there's that continuum of, this can help you nurture existing relationships, your existing pipeline. That's obviously more immediate revenue impact. And then building affinity, that's you building for the future, 2, 3, 4 quarters ahead, so that you have a pipeline that you can then activate against. All right. We're going to stop sharing and we're going to just talk here.
So here's what you guys have been waiting for. We're going to get really practical for you about what you should post. I think one thing I want to call out as we're talking about what you should post, it's not that you should never talk about your products or services. I mean, we're right now in the middle of promoting this training that I talked about at the beginning, and I'm posting about that and I'm calling it out when I'm posting. But the difference is I've gained trust from people in my audience that I've been building already. And so there's people who want to hear what I have to say. And same with personal posts. Like if you post something that's personal, people who know you and you've built affinity with them already, they want to engage with what you're doing. But you have to build that up, and you have to show people that you're not just here to sell products or to push products, but you're here as a valuable resource. Every time that they see something coming from you, or the majority of the time, they're getting value from what you're doing. And so how can you position yourself in a way that you are giving value? And I know language that gets used, especially in the sales space, is, being a thought leader, being a trusted advisor. But then when it comes to what you should post on LinkedIn, it kind of comes back to, I'm going to talk about the features and benefits of my product, or I'm going to talk about how my solution is better than everybody else. Whereas the best place to start is really focusing on the pain points and problems or the challenges that your ideal customers are facing, or that people in the industry are facing, and tying those into what you do, so that it's not just, you're not necessarily talking super generally, but not so specifically that the only thing you can do, or the only answer, is just my products, come buy from me. And then, the other piece of that is, as you start talking about pain points and problems and challenges, you're able to share your unique point of view on what's going on in the industry. And some of that is your unique way of solving it, like Mike was talking about earlier. But some of it is just your unique view on how to solve these issues and work through those challenges.
Yeah, and even, Joseph, you're talking about us sharing about the training. The reality is, when you're posting about it, you're not just saying, hey, we're launching this training, come join us. You're framing the message in terms of the pain and the problem that exists. And then if somebody is experiencing that pain and problem, they might decide, well, yeah, this makes sense for me to check out. Right? Which actually is a whole other thing of, like, you can't manufacture demand. Demand either exists or doesn't. You either have the pain and the problem, or you don't.
Yeah, and then when it comes to the pain or problem, this is kind of getting into the fundamentals of marketing. But to figure out how to talk about the pain or the problem, you really have to understand who you're talking to. And that kind of goes back to what Mike was saying about figuring out that ecosystem. If you don't know who it is that you want to be engaging with your content, whether that's your ideal buyers or future employees or key industry leaders, key opinion leaders, people like that, if you don't know who you're posting for, there's no way you're going to be able to really nail their pain and problem. So the more that you key in on who that person is that you're trying to reach, the more you can speak their language. And an example that I'm working through right now is I have a lot of marketing people that are that I've built relationships with over the years, and I can write content that resonates with them. But I've been switching gears lately as we're building out different things here, and I'm talking more about sales and some of the challenges in the sales space. And as I'm starting to post that content, I'm learning some of the relevant pain points that people really are sensitive about. And when I was first posting about it, I wasn't really finding those. But then as I continue to work on it, I'm honing in on those challenges. And now when I'm posting, I'm getting feedback directly, whether people are messaging me or in the comments where people are saying, hey, you're reading my mail, basically. And it's once you get to that point where people are like, hey, you get me, you understand me, that's when you're going to start seeing traction from the content that you're putting out there.
Yeah, and the other important thing to note there is by really defining the ecosystem that you're trying to build and who you're trying to get in front of allows you to not get lost in this kind of vanity metrics, engagement, and likes game, if you will, because you can't take engagement likes to the bank, right? So it's easy if you don't know who you are, if you haven't really established who you're trying to get in front of, it's easy to go, oh, well, I posted this and looks like it didn't do as well, so I'm gonna go do this other thing. When in reality, that thing that got less engagement might have gotten engagement from the exact right people. So, and you can track all of that, right? I mean, LinkedIn is not perfect, doesn't give you everything, but gives you some directional metrics on, what job titles are engaging with your content and seeing your content, which companies, geography, locations, things like that. So by really defining who it is you're trying to get in front of, you can really do that. And on top of that, the other important metric people forget is like what I really care about. I mean, yes, I care about engagement, obviously, because the more people engage, the more people see. But what I really care about are profile views. Right? I want people to click through and check out who I am and what I do. So as an example, what I'll tell you is, as we've been honing our message and changing what we put out there and who we're talking to and things like that, I can tell you my reach and engagement has decreased. Also, there's part of the algorithm thing in here as well. But my profile views have skyrocketed. So what that means is I'm getting in front of more of the right people. So measuring appropriately is also really important. But to do that, you need to know what you're measuring and who you're trying to attract.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Mike. I would even say the most important metric is conversations. Are you starting conversations in the comments? Are you starting conversations in direct messages? Are people reaching out to you? Are people engaging with the content you're putting out there? And profile views mean that it resonated enough for them to go see what you're doing, and you definitely want to get that. But if somebody comments and then reaches out to you through a direct message and says, hey, this is really resonating with you, I want to build a relationship, that's really what we're looking for. And to Mike's point, as we've been shifting some of our language, I'm seeing more of the right people wanting to have a conversation with me about things that I can actually help them with, and that we solve that problem, compared to posts that I did not that long ago that were getting way more engagement. And the final piece on that, and then we'll keep going on the tactical piece of this, is a lot of times the people that you really want to talk to don't engage with your content. They're not going to comment. They're not going to like it. And one way that I know that that's happening for me is that I'm posting a lot more videos, and some of those videos are not getting a ton of engagement, but they keep getting more and more impressions. And when I look at the metrics, it's because people are watching the video, but they're not engaging with it. So after the likes stop and the engagement stops from my network, I know that it's still going to other people who are watching it. Usually it's at least twice, if not 3 times the amount of watch time on these videos after I stop getting any engagement on that post. And, then I'm getting feedback from people that I know personally that when I'm having a conversation, they're like, "Oh, that was a great video." Like you didn't like it. You didn't comment on it. But that's a metric that you really can't measure very easily. So it's really not looking for necessarily what gets the most reactions, but what leads to the most conversations and profile views from the right people.
So Joseph, let's talk about again, what people usually struggle with is, well, I don't know what to post, right? So the first part is figuring out your pillar content, right? Your topics. How can we help people do that?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is talking. If you're in sales, it's really easy. What are people that you're having sales conversations talking about? And if you don't know, and then you're probably doing too much talking during your sales conversations. But if you're asking questions about, what problems they're experiencing and you're digging into those challenges, you're going to start learning about the pain that they really have. Focus on those topics. What are the top pain points that you hear? What are the top challenges that they're facing? And again, you don't always have to talk about something that directly relates to your product. Maybe this is something that's tangential, but it gets you in front of the right people more often. Going back to Jeff Winter, not everything that he does focuses on Industry 4.0, but that's the topic he talks about a lot because he knows that people care about it and that it's interesting. So number one is, what pain points and problems and challenges are people facing? One that's even easier if you're struggling to figure that out is what's going on in the news in your industry. Are there any trending topics or trending articles? And I did a video walking through exactly how to use that kind of content the other day, and I'll post a link to it here. But it's super easy to create a video where you go to a news article, you highlight a couple pieces of it, and then you record a screen share video where your face is just in the corner over there, and you talk through, hey, this is what's going on in the industry. Here's some breaking news about that, and here's why this is important for XYZ kind of people. So maybe an article comes out about economic headwinds that are happening because of things that are going on in the financial market and how that's impacting the amount of money that companies are spending. I'm just making this up, but I could do a screen share of a video like that and talk about, hey, it's going to be even more challenging to close deals as a salesperson in Q4 because of these stats that are coming out. This is why you should care, and here's some things you can do to start prepping your pipeline, so you have these deals coming in.
Yeah, some of the other things would be, let's say you're fairly new to the industry or new to the company you're selling for. This is where talking more about the some of the social proof, but reframing it again in terms of that pain point and problem that was solved, right? So people like to see and hear stories. So tell them a story. And they want to hear people like me have these same problems. Like, that's reassuring to people. We always say oh, I don't know if this makes you feel better, but we're going through we all say that and we all sort of laugh it off. But the reason we say it is because just knowing that you're not the only one in the same boat does make you feel better to a certain extent. It's not going to solve your problem, but it makes you feel better about the fact that you're going through this challenge, right? And then it's, well, people like me solve this problem in this way. Okay. Either that could be a reaffirming thing, I was thinking I need to do this, and now I see that other people do this, right? So, but again, you have to reframe it in terms of the problem, of the pain point that exists.
Yeah, and another piece that you can do there that's kind of interesting, another approach, is to find one of the areas that people have a lot of objections around working with a company like yours, and just addressing that head on, but not talking about how your solution solves this problem, but just talking about whatever challenge it is that's keeping them from dealing with that. And if you can get people talking about it, for one, if you're in sales or if you're leading an organization, the fact that you're willing to be talking about something that's would normally be seen as a weakness shows that you do have a solution that can help overcome that. But it also helps you to start a conversation where you're going to learn a ton and start being seen as more of a thought leader if it's something that people are really dealing with a lot. Again, I think one way to frame it also is, what do the people you want to talk with, what are they already talking about, and what are they already having conversations about, and how can you create a post where that conversation then moves to your content. And I'll give an example from something I posted a little over a year ago on a marketing topic. So something that's hot in the marketing world is, should you post pricing on your website? And a lot of marketers believe that you should, and a lot of them believe that you shouldn't. But a lot of executive teams and sales teams don't want to post pricing on their website. I knew that it's a hot button topic. I've seen people argue about it back and forth. So I created this kind of meme graphic, kind of poking at the issue. And I didn't really give my super strong opinion on it, but I just kind of made a forum for other people to talk about the issue. And then tons of people are commenting and engaging with that post. And I, again, wasn't even really necessarily going crazy on my opinion. It's other people giving their opinion and talking about it, but they're all doing that on my content, which then makes it super easy if I want to reach out to anybody that's commented on my post, for me to connect with them, for me to reach out to them and say, start a conversation with them when they've had a conversation like that on my content.
Yeah, and the more example I'll give that I consistently do is, we know that one of the core challenges that prevents people from doing marketing in the way that we talk about it, so really executing against relationship-led growth framework that we have, is having appropriate measurement in place. So I will pretty consistently sort of put things out there. And I also know that that's something where there are a lot of gripes against marketing agencies and consultancies that talk a big game but don't really measure, right? So I pretty consistently will put out content out there around like how to do it, why you should do it, how we do it, all these kinds of things where, some of it is a little bit vulnerable in the sense that we don't have all the answers, but it allows me to have those conversations with people who believe that, but maybe don't know what to do about it. So, Joseph, let's switch gears a little bit in terms of, okay, well, let's say we figured out the topics. One thing maybe I'll say is, one last thing I'll add to that before we move on, sort of into the how to do it, is make sure you don't have too many. So I would say 3 to 5 at most, my opinion. Because what you want is you want consistency. Consistency is really important. So if you're talking about 10, 15 different things, people kind of don't really know what to do with you as a, I hate to use the word, but influencer, right? As a thought leader. They're like, well, can you really help me with this? Or are you really about this? Do you really have enough expertise? Like it kind of undermines you a little bit. So making sure that you are consistent in what you talk about. It doesn't mean that you just post the same thing over and over again, or post the same case study out there, things like that, but the same core topics. So again, 3 to 5 at most. I would say really narrow down to 3 if you can, but it might be hard for you to do in the beginning because you might not know. So you can kind of in public figure out what do people really care about, and then narrow down your topics from there. But let's talk about some of the how, because I think what people sometimes struggle with is like, well, yeah, I know a lot about the industry, but how do I really do this? Like what's going to make this work on the platform? So Joseph, I know you've got a number of examples that we want to go through.
Yeah, and this kind of falls in between the topic and how you actually do it. So the biggest challenge that I've seen people face, and that I faced when I was starting to post content, is just doing it. And it's really head trash around, I don't have anything valuable to share. So the first thing is you got to get over that. You do have things that are valuable to share. And even if you're new to the industry, being able to gather different people together and get other people to share their point of view through the content you're creating, and we'll talk about that in a second, is extremely valuable. But the first thing you have to do is just go, I do have valuable things to share, and put it out there. The second
Joseph,
thing is
something really quickly, something that I think for people to get over this is, if you, especially if you're in the services business, if you have people that are willing to pay you to do a service, you have something valuable to share. Otherwise, they wouldn't pay you to do the service. So think about it that way. If someone's willing to pay you a lot of money to whatever, consult on any given topics. Maybe it's sales coaching, maybe it's go to market, maybe it's IT implementation, so software implementation, whatever it is. If they're paying you big money to do that, you have something valuable to share that other people don't know and that they want to learn.
Yeah, and I think one other piece to that, Mike, is you have to realize that what is basic and obvious to you is not obvious to everybody else. And this is something I've been running into with my content recently, where I'm talking more about how to post on LinkedIn and what to post on LinkedIn. To me, it's a little bit basic. And to a lot of the people who are already in my audience, it's also basic. So from the people who I'm already friends with, they're kind of like, you're just regurgitating things that other people are saying. But then to the people that I'm actually wanting to reach, they're like, this is super helpful. Thank you for breaking it down in an easy way to understand. So you have to, again, understand you're not writing this content for your peers, most likely. You're not writing this for people who are ahead of you. You're not writing it for the ultimate subject matter expert. Typically, depends on who your audience is, obviously. You're usually writing it for somebody that you do have more expertise in them. So thinking in terms of how do you simplify something to make it easier to understand? How do you take something that's really complicated and break it down? Okay, so then how do you actually practically do that if you're not used to it? I think the most important thing is deciding on what format to start with really comes down to how you operate or what you're best at. So usually you're going to either start with writing or you're going to start by talking. And whichever version comes more naturally to you, start there. So for me personally, I usually talk things out. And when I talk about ideas and I talk through them, I start solidifying them, and then I'll go write them down and then kind of go back talking through those points and then, kind of refining back and forth, but usually starts by talking through an idea for me. Other people are opposite. They need to write to solidify their thoughts. So if you're more of a talker or you're more of a writer, start with the format that makes the most sense. And I would say that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to produce a video if you're a talker, and I'm going to walk you through what I'm talking about here, but I would lean towards whatever your strength is. Just start by posting in that format. So if you are a talker, post video. It's just going to save you a lot of steps and a lot of kind of back and forth, and start with video. If you're a writer, start with written posts would be my recommendation, but you don't have to do it that way. On the flip side, if you are a talker, but you're not ready to post video of yourself, record a video of you talking through a topic. So somebody said that they're in test automation. And so, if you're talking about test automation and the challenges that people are facing when they're trying to, your website's no script. So my guess is that people are trying to script these things manually and you're giving AI to be able to do that. So when you're talking through the challenges that people are facing when they're manually creating scripts for automation, you can talk it through first. Then you can take that video and get a transcript of it. And then you could take it from there and put it into ChatGPT-4 or something like that and have ChatGPT summarize that script for you. Now, I wouldn't take that and just post it, but you could take that and refine it into a written post. And so that's how you could go from talking to refining it to writing it. Or on the flip side, if you write it, you can write out a video script and then, publish that script out. I have some other ideas on that, Mike, but
yeah, and like more tactically, like Joseph, really quickly, what people can do is, because if you never use ChatGPT, again, think of it as a companion rather than a ghost writer necessarily. So you can, again, you pop that script in there, or not script, but transcript in there, and then you can ask it to summarize this for you in a LinkedIn post, right? And you can give it some more criteria in your prompt. And that can give you a baseline of something that you can then edit, right? So the important thing is to get to start and have an easy way to get a baseline.
Yeah, so great question, Benjamin. We're gonna have a slide a little bit later on with some tools that you can use and talks through that more specifically. But you can use something like Loom, or you could use a tool like Loom. It's a video recording or screen share. It's free. You can get a free version of it, and it'll automatically transcribe for you. Or if you're wanted a little bit more editing power than what's offered through that, you can get Descript. They also have a free version. There's obviously more professional tools, but those are two that are really easy if you're not technical, you're not a video editing person, and those will create transcripts for you. So you can just copy and paste the transcript from there. Then you could go to ChatGPT 4 is the one that I'd recommend. It's $20 a month, does a way better job at stuff like this. And you put that transcript in, and there's a couple ways you could do it. You can write a super simple prompt that's write a LinkedIn post in the first person using this transcript. It'll write it for you. I'm not ever happy with how that turns out directly out of it, but you can take that and then, comb through it and write it, but it's not writing content for you. So the difference is this isn't AI generated content. This is your content. This is coming out of your head. You recorded a video to do it. It's just taking that transcript and summarizing it in a friendly way that makes it a lot faster for you to produce that kind of content.
Yeah, what's the other thing to think about is when you're deciding what format or what medium to start with, is think about how you're best at communicating. But one caveat I'll throw out there is a lot of salespeople are generally very gregarious and exciting and really know how to talk. But you go in front of a camera and you turn into a robot. And I'm not saying this to make fun of any salespeople. It's common. And the reason is because you're used to having feedback, right? You're used to having somebody on the other side, whether that's virtual or in a conference room or in an event or whatever it is. But in a camera, there's no feedback. So the solution to that little trick is invite a colleague and be like, hey, so-and-so, can we jump on a Zoom or whatever your video platform of choice is? Doesn't matter. And say, can we jump on a Zoom and record a conversation about XYZ topic? Now you got a back and forth. Now you can be your usual, gregarious and exciting self, and so can the other person. Now both of you get content out of it. The other thing, and I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit, but also then think about working this into your existing workflows, which gets into, I don't have the time. Totally get it. You've got phone calls to make, emails to send, pipeline to manage. If you're an executive, you got a billion other things to do that are not sales related or biz dev related. Cool, get it. I'm sure there's a weekly, pipeline meeting or marketing meeting or some kind of meeting where you're talking about industry and client things that you can record and pull content out of. Obviously, you have to be careful about proprietary stuff and things like that, especially if you're going to dump it into ChatGPT. So, quick thing, when you're recording stuff, if there's anything extremely proprietary, careful with it. Like, don't dump it necessarily into ChatGPT or take that part out, whatever it is. But that aside, I can guarantee you there are certain meetings, like for us, for example, our weekly team meeting. Now, we don't actually do this, although we should, but we often do. Mostly we didn't do this because we have all these other opportunities. We don't need that. Like, we've created all sorts of other things where we don't need it. So I should qualify that. But if we didn't, we could record our weekly team meeting where we do trainings, where we train our own team on our POV and things like that. Guess what? That's content you can then use for this stuff. Okay. Your, weekly pipeline meeting potentially could be a great thing for that. Things like that. So I took a bit of a tangent, Joseph. Sorry, but
no, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, kind of building on what you're saying. This is something that was also on my mind this week. There's one method that all great video creators have implemented at some point, and it's practice. That's what separates out people who are great on video from people who aren't. And to Mike's point, I've been surprised at how some of the most engaging people in real life are honestly sometimes the most terrible on video. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, Mike, where it's because they're used to getting that feedback. They're used to the crowd. And it takes practice to get over that and to like stare into a black camera lens. And I struggle with this even right now. Like when I go back and try to pull clips from this, a lot of times I'm looking at the screen because I'm looking at Mike when I'm talking, which is fine. But I'm practicing like actually looking into the camera and talking. And it's really challenging to do that. But once you've practiced it a bunch of times, and especially if you go back and edit your own video for a while and you work through that, you're going to start to say, oh man, I use all the time, or I say like all the time, or you're going to find your crutch phrases when you watch that content back yourself. And that helps to, self-edit some of that. But
which, by the way, there's a little hack for that. Like if you are going to do this whole record a conversation thing, I can't show it to you because my camera's literally attached to it, but there are a bunch of different variations of it, but it's like, I forget what the one that I have is called, but it's pretty much like a clear plastic thing that has a camera attachment to it, which allows me to put the camera on top of where Joseph's face is. So I'm technically looking at Joseph, but I'm also looking at the camera at the same time.
Yeah, the way I do that is I have my webcam because I have a huge monitor, and if my camera was on top of it, I'd be like looking way up. So I have a camera on a tripod, and it sits right in the middle of my screen for all
they're
meetings,
a bunch
so
of
I'm at
ways,
least
exactly
looking closer to it. Okay, so you start with where your strength is, whether that's writing or talking, and start there. I would really encourage everyone to start recording video. Even if you're not comfortable posting it yet, just start getting comfortable with it. And the reason is when people see your face and they see your mannerisms, when you meet with people in person, they're going to feel like they know you already. So especially if you're in sales, when you get on a sales call with somebody that's seen a bunch of your videos, they're going to feel that. My one caveat to that is just make sure that you're using language and talking like you normally would, so that when somebody shows up on a meeting, they're not like, oh, you're nothing like you are in video. So, stay true to yourself when you're creating videos. But yeah, leaning into video, I think, is really valuable. Just start recording. You don't have to hit publish, but then eventually you're going to have to get over that and just publish a video. You're not going to like the first video you publish. You're not going to probably like the 10th or 20th video you publish. But when you look back in a year, if you don't cringe at a video that you posted a year ago, you probably haven't grown. So the fact that you don't like it means that you're improving. And if you look back at stuff that you created 6 months ago, you're going to start seeing improvement in yourself in the video you're creating. And that only comes by practice and recording it and getting it out there. Anyway, kind of beating a dead horse.
I talk with my hands too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and
totally
you could
fine.
my mic's attached, but if you're using a mic that's not attached, you could just stand further back. You could use your hand gestures, and that's totally fine to do it that way.
Actually, that's a really good point. Again, we're getting really, really tactical, but for people who do talk with their hands, I would say yes, do that. Like actually step back. I don't do that enough, but because this is how you're going to be in real life. It's not, you can't see me. I'm always moving my hands around, but I actually think that's important.
Yeah, I recently heard somebody say if you know who wins a debate, like a recorded TV debate, if you turn off all the mics and you just watch the people how they're talking, and it's the people who are animated, who are using their hands, who are using great expressions, they're the ones who are the most captivating, and usually they're the ones who come out on top. So yeah, use that. It's a strength to do that, but you got to set your camera in the right spot. Okay, so to make it, I want to keep pulling this together. So you start, with wherever you have a strength. Said that a bunch of times. So moving to the next piece of that is, again, focusing on those topics. I would start with challenges, pain points, or something that's trending, just because those are usually the easiest thing to start out and talk about and help you to develop that point of view. Then as you're publishing that content, you're going to get feedback. Listen to that feedback so that you can post content that's more and more engaging to the people you want to reach, and be willing to kind of change your topics or how you're talking about it based on the feedback you're getting. But then, yeah, you can do a couple different styles of video. So one is going to be screen recording and sharing an article or sharing something from a website and using a screen share as kind of the jumping off point. You can do a monologue video where you're just looking straight into the camera and you're sharing your point of view or talking about the challenge. You could do something on site. If you're doing something technical and you're going on site to a customer, you could ask them for permission to show something that you run into on a regular basis and talk about it. That's super engaging to do it that way. I've started creating content myself I'm recording me doing something. I have a property, so me cutting down a tree or me, planting something and then using that as an analogy to talk about a challenge. So there's lots of different ways to do video like that. And then something that we do a lot and that we really highly recommend is conversations. So like Mike said, if you're having a challenge figuring out what to talk about, find somebody who's smarter than you, record a conversation with them. And that could be an ideal customer for you. It could be somebody that's on your team or somebody you already know, or it could be somebody you want to build a relationship with. And a lot of people are open to getting on a call and talking. And you could either do it as a live stream like this. It's super easy. There's lots of software you can use that's either free or really inexpensive to run a live like this. And you could have somebody on to do it that way, or you could record it, edit it, and send that video out. And then I'm trying to think, I think there's one other form of video I was thinking of, but anyway. Oh, Mike, you're on mute.
I was on mute. The other thing to add to this would be, like, a lot of people, when they start thinking video specifically, they get a little scared because, like, well, it's either expensive or it's hard or this, that, and the other. The reality is the tools out there right now, you can make this super, 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 super simple. So a tool like Descript, for example, you can create a very simple template. If you don't know how to create a template, you have Canva. If you don't know how to use Canva, you can literally buy a frame off of like Innovato Elements or any of that. Like, it's really, really low lift to create a very basic template. And then all you gotta do is record your video and pop it in there every single time, and you got the same template. It looks the same, branding, etc. Or if you work at a company, which I think everybody here does, ask your marketing team, like, hey, can I get you to create a frame for me that's a 1080 by 1080 that allows me to pop my face in the middle? And that's it. Okay. So leverage your marketing team for things like that. They might already have it because they might already have a template they use for more professional videos that they create.
And a lot of times they'll be excited to do that because the amount of times that marketing people have salespeople reach out and they want to create a video on their own. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll do anything, anything to help you. So you mentioned a couple other formats there. I was leaning heavily in this conversation into doing video just because I'm pretty bullish on that. And I think everybody should learn how to and practice that. But you, again, lean into your strengths. So if you are more of a visual person, or you want to share a diagram, like you don't have to be a graphic designer either. Like share a napkin sketch walking through something, or write something on a whiteboard and take a picture of it and post that. So wherever your strength is. So then, other formats would be just text only. In technical spaces, text only can do great. So, start there. You can post an image post. I would recommend not just posting some generic image. You're better off just doing text. But if you're creating a custom image, like I'm talking about, whiteboard drawing, or, putting together a slide that shares information in an easy to consume way, or a meme or a GIF or something that catches people's attention, but is also very customized to your post. Otherwise, again, if it's just a generic picture of a building, just to throw a picture in there, you're better off, just doing text only. And then final thing that you can do, just tactic wise, to create content is do a carousel. They take definitely a lot more time to create a carousel, but if you have an idea that kind of has a progressive thought and you could catch people's attention at the beginning, I follow a couple people who primarily are posting a text post. So, just only text post on LinkedIn. Sorry, responding to a comment that's coming in there from Benjamin. But yeah, the carousels, you can progressively show a thought. Those are best when it's very simple, very visual. In fact, I'll find an example of somebody that does a great job at doing those. So that's another way, if you're more visual or you have something that kind of takes that story progression, you could create a post like that.
So a few other tactical things in terms of, again, kind of finding the time to do it and making this easier. So I've already mentioned working into existing workflows. A couple other things that are really helpful as you're getting going. One is batching. So LinkedIn has an existing scheduling function. So you don't have to post live. You can write it. You can spend whatever 30 minutes writing a bunch of posts and then schedule them all. The other thing is keep a repository of ideas. So it could be a Google Doc, it could be a Notion board, it could be a ClickUp doc, whatever your tool of choice is. I don't care. It could be a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Whatever makes the most sense to you, but keep a repository. And if you really don't know, if you get stuck or whatever, focus on commenting. So again, going back to once you've established who that ecosystem is, who the right people are that you want to get in front of, follow the influencers that are out there and comment on their things, because they'll spur ideas of, oh, well, I have something I can add to this. And I can't tell you that at least once a week, I will post a comment that I go, oh, well, this should totally be a separate post that I do. Sometimes I literally just copy and paste it. And sometimes I will save it to my repository, tweak it, and then post it in a slightly different way to make it have more impact on its own outside of the comment threads. The one last thing I'll throw out there is if you're not using LinkedIn Sales Nav, use it, and don't just build your target account list, build an influencer list so you can follow. So build a list of key opinion leaders, influencers, whatever you want to call them in your industry. And again, use that to consistently post on the things. Not only does that give you exposure to the audience you're looking for, but it also allows you to, in public and on somebody else's dime, if you will, work through your ideas and things like that.
All right, Mike, can you pull up the presentation again, and we can just show, because we're right at time here. So I want to show these on screen. That way, if you want to use some of these tools, you can. So Loom is free, screen recording. Descript, they also have a free and a paid version. You can do screen recording. You can do videos. Definitely easier to edit, but takes a little bit more. You might have to watch some tutorials to get that. ChatGPT 4 is good for summarizing transcripts to help kind of jumpstart the process for you. $20 a month. I put the highlighter Chrome extension in here. If you're going to do the articles, definitely watch my video on that and you can see it. You could record a conversation in Zoom or Google Meets, or you could use Riverside, or Descript just came out with the paid options for recording that are going to be a lot higher quality. Thanks for joining, Benjamin. Really appreciate it. And then some tools for creating slideshows for those carousel posts. Those would be Canva. There's a free version of that. You can use Google Slides. You do have to get in and format the page to vertical, but you can create that, and you just create a PDF and upload it to LinkedIn. So those are some of the tools. And then finally, we do have a relationship enablement intensive training that's coming up. It's going to be 6 weeks. It's only $97 for you to come once a week, get much more in-depth training on these same topics. And then we'll walk with you through exactly how to do everything we talked about today and more, and give you direct feedback. So I'd love to see you there. I'm going to repost a link to that here in the comments. But with that, thank you so much for joining us for today's live.
All right, everybody, if you want to sign up, you got Joseph's posting the link. And other than that, we will see you all in, Joseph, we're off next week, right? A couple weeks?
Yep. It's either going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We're still figuring that out. So we'll keep you guys posted on that.
Awesome. All righty. Thanks, everyone. We will see you all soon.